Okay. Hope that we have a better recording this time. If anything goes off in the recording, please let me know right away. Okay. Kitzur. We're finishing off the laws of Shabbos candle lighting. Okay, we're holding law number 13, Yud Gimel. So the halacha says that Isha Suma, what if the woman is blind? Meaning she can't officially, let's say, take joy, so to say, in the light because of her lack of vision. So what is the halacha? Who should light then? Is it still better for the woman to light the candles, or maybe in such a situation the man should light the candles, the husband, if there is one? So he says the halacha is like this: Isha Suma, if a blind woman im yesh la bal, if she has a husband at home, is yad lekabal v'yivarach, then better for the husband to light and to bless, because part of the blessing is taking in the joy of the light, the benefit of the light, and in that case, it's better to have the husband light than if the wife is blind. V'im la bal, however, what happens if she does not have a husband? V'hidar levada, and she's living alone. So then the halach says, madlekes u mivareches, then she lights and makes the blessing. Okay, so she both lights and she makes the blessing. Let's say she lives with other people, not her husband, who's, so to say, as one couple and therefore responsible for together, you're both responsible for the happenings in the house, but she lives with other people, not, let's say, roommates, what have you. Is v'im dari macher ba'is echad v'acher madlikim, and the others are lighting, whether they be men or women, is madlekes hasuma b'blay bracha. So then the woman who's blind would light without a blessing. So we have three scenarios. Scenario number one is if she's married and has a husband at home, so the husband should light with a blessing because he's actually able to benefit visually from the benefit of the light. If she's living alone, then she lights and makes a blessing. If she's living with others, so she's responsible for her own, so to say, light, but at the same time, there's others lighting in the house, so there is light in the house. So they would light with a bracha, and she would light without a bracha. Ach imhi akeres abayis. What happens if she's not just someone staying in a home with others, but she's the akeres abayis? It's her home. There's others lighting, but it's her home. She's the woman of the house. Then, because it's her house, she would light first. She would make a blessing, and then the others could light. They should also light, also make a blessing. The reason why she would light first is because it's her home, so she lights first, meaning giving the opportunity to bring the light into the house. And therefore, because no one has made a blessing yet, she makes a blessing. If others would light first and make a blessing, it could complicate things. So therefore, this is the fourth scenario. One is that she's married. Second one is she lives alone. Third one is she lives with other people. The fourth one is she lives with other people and it's her home. So in that case, she lights first, blesses. She lives with other people. She lights after they light and does not bless. If she's alone, she lights and blesses. And if she's with a husband, he lights and he blesses. Okay, so those are the four scenarios if a woman, unfortunately, is blind and can't take the visual benefit of light. I'm trying to remember what we've learned somewhere. I'm not sure if it was in Chassidus or in the Talmud class, about someone said that there's a benefit. I think it was the Gemara we learned that says there's a benefit of light, even in the case where even if a person is blind, that the person says they want light in the house. So there's a benefit even for a blind person. I think the Gemara asked, what's the difference? And they said, so others could see where I'm going and warn me, and I shouldn't. So there's a benefit even for a blind person of light. Therefore, there's a source to make a bracha. Okay, I can't remember where we learned that recently. Okay, the footnote is just a source. The last final halacha in the laws of candlelighting of the Kitzur. Isha sheshakcha pamachas. This is a halacha that a lot of women are careful with, but you have to define it. Hey Aaron, if a woman forgets to light one time, pamachas ladlik. So in a way of what's called pshia. It was negligence. So then, if she had a custom of lighting a certain amount of candles up until that point, she should add one candle as, so to say, an atonement, kind of, so to say, for missing and being negligent in that week. Let's say she didn't light many weeks. She should continue to add one candle for those times that she was in negligence and didn't light. The reason for this is to make to so she should have a hecker. She should know to be more careful, to not allow the situation to repeat itself. So, so to say, there's a consequence. The consequence is a hecker, and the fact that she lights now 3 candles, 4 candles, 5 candles, however many she added, is a sign for her to be more careful going forward. That moving forward she should be more careful. So that's only a hecker. It's only necessary if it was negligent or close to negligence. But if it's an oinus, it's out of her control. So then, if it's like an emergency, he says in English, an emergency. An emergency doesn't. Oinus can be many reasons. Emergency seems to indicate that you're running to the emergency room. Hold on, Aaron. Oinus also can mean there was no ability for you to light for many other reasons, but it was out of your control. It wasn't negligence or close to negligence. There's what's called shogeg cover of amazed. There's sometimes where things are, you could say it's out of my control, but that's only after the fact. You could have prevented the situation from happening. So then she doesn't have to add. Now I know people who that actually, this is an important halacha. It doesn't mean to say that if, let's say, you're a balas tshuva and have been lit for many years, that falls under the category of negligence, and you're going to count how many weeks you didn't light candles from when you would typically light 500 candles, whatever, however many weeks that was, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a woman who was already in the system of lighting, and there was a situation of negligence. Based on the negligence, so as a hecker, to remind her, she wouldn't. I know my grandmother went through a situation in the hospital where she couldn't light, but she took it upon herself to add candles for those weeks that she was in the hospital, even though based on what we're learning now, she wouldn't have to, but she added. It wasn't that. We're talking about a few, I think maybe 5 or 6 or 10 candles. Okay, before Aaron, we're going to get to your question 1 second. Let's just do the commentaries here. Maybe that will answer some of your questions. So it says, she should light 1 extra candle. A very poor woman may add a little oil to one light or use a larger candle. So here we find the Eliyahu Rabba, and adds another kind of method. If you want to add and it's too many candles or it's too expensive, so let's say you would typically light such amount of olive oil, to add a little oil per each week. That's also an option, or to use a larger candle. Number 34 is just quoting a source. Yes, Aaron. Aaron, you had a question? If you're asking it, I don't hear anything. You don't have a question. Okay, Rebecca, go ahead.
Okay,
Hi.
just hold on.
So, Aaron
Okay.
could go first if you
Yeah.
want.
Okay. So say you light 1 candle for each kid. Each girl in your family lights a candle, and then the mother forgets. Does you have to add one also for the child for each day missed?
No. It should be 1 candle just for the Shabbos.
Right, I know, but each kid adds a candle. So if it's a normal Shabbos and you didn't forget.
No.
Okay, I got you.
I mean, if you're, let's say, on a regular week lighting 6 candles for your husband and 4 kids, you would not add 6 candles every week.
Okay.
Rebecca.
If I asked you this already in the past, I'm sorry, I forgot. So let's say my mom is away for Shabbos and I go stay with my dad. So then who's supposed to light? Am I supposed to light or is he supposed to light?
You would light.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Again, we learned that from Rivka. Right? Rivka lit candles even though she wasn't even the wife of Yitzchak, she lit candles before she got married.
Right. Okay, Got
two
it.
little candles in the house when Yitzchak and for Yitzchak and Avram. So that that's definitely you would light. Again, it seems from previous halachas before that there's a kind of ownership the woman has on lighting, and the only time really that Shulchan Aruch says, the Kitzur says, that the husband should not be considerate to that ownership is if it's really coming to crunch time to Shabbos and you're concerned that the Shabbos is going to go and no one's going to light and you don't want to offend your wife. At that point, you shouldn't be concerned with offending your wife. Make sure to light better because you may end up being with no light in the house because no one's going to light. But otherwise, we're very sensitive to the woman that this is her mitzvah. And if she's able and ready, then she should light. The only time or the case where the woman is unfortunately blind and she's married, then the Shulchan Aruch husband should light.
But also you taught us in the past that the husband is supposed to like light the candle first, like to burn the wick sort of to make it easier for when the woman lights the candles. But we're not supposed to blow out a flame. So how does he get the flame out?
So we don't blow out the flame with our mouth, like to breathe out. The custom by Jews is either to wave your hand and kind of create a fan. My grandfather there used to, have a lightly spit, put it that way, at the candles to put them out.
And that works?
It worked for him.
Okay, I was just thinking you could like shake the candle, maybe that
No,
could.
you don't want to do anything that's going to start. You start shaking the candle, and then you start shaking the oils, the wax that's going everywhere. You don't want to create a situation where
Okay.
where no, I mean it's halachically you don't want to create a situation where it's going to end up turning into a fire.
Right.
That's
Okay.
not the idea. You don't have to get too overworked, but there's ways of blowing out without using your breath. Yes, Aaron.
I just want to make one comment. Don't mention that in class on Mondays about the spitting. We're going for
Yeah.
hours.
I know.
I just thought
Very good. So that basically wraps up the laws of lighting. If there's any other questions about candle lighting, this would be the time.
I just wanted to ask one quick question. Is there any candles you can't use? Any type of candles you are forbidden to use?
Candles or fire source?
Oh, either both, because we want to know what.
And anything that's not going to be pleasant for others, you shouldn't use. Don't use something like scented candles that maybe you like and you have guests there that's going to make them uncomfortable. You can't use anything that's going to create an uncomfortable environment. So the Gemara, that's what we learned the Madlikim. We learned about all the different kerosenes that are smell. We don't use gases and stuff that are smelly or stuff like that are not pleasant. The idea is to bring shalom, peace and harmony in the house. So anything that's not working towards that should not be used. And I would add to that even scented candles, because not everyone appreciates them. And we don't find that women light scented candles on Shabbos. All right, are we ready to move on to chapter 76?
I just had a quick question,
Sure.
Rabbi, about candles. So if you wanted to light an extra candle for times that you weren't able to light a candle, it can be just one. It doesn't have to be more than one, does it? You don't light double the number of candles, do you?
So there was two questions. I think Aaron asked the question of some women light more than one candle for the light. If they're lighting for their husband, they'll light two candles. If they're lighting for their family, for instance, my wife, we Baruch Hashem Kehilchathah have 6 children. Even though 2 of them are married, and all of them are the girls are all of the age of lighting. So our custom is, and others have that custom as well, to light for your children, not your grandchildren, but for your children. You light a candle for each child, not for their spouses, but for them. So my wife now lights 8 candles for me and my wife, and then our 6 children, Kehilchathah. If she were to, God forbid, have to add a candle for negligence of not lighting, she would not add 8 candles like Aaron asked, because the idea is just a hecker. Now, in the Shulchan Aruch, it says that if you were negligent a few times, not just 1 week, but more than 1 week, you would light a candle for each week that you missed. So like my grandmother, she wasn't negligent. She was in the hospital, but she took upon herself to add for those weeks that she did not light. I guess, she was in the war, and
Right.
she was in the Holocaust, hiding out as a non-Jew, for months at a time, for almost a year. She didn't light for those weeks because if she would have lit candles, she would have obviously been caught as a Jew and would have been killed. So those were not, that's an oinus. She couldn't light. So she didn't, it wasn't an emergency, but it was an oinus. So she didn't light for those weeks, but the weeks that she was in the hospital, she did light. Again, that's not, you don't have to light for weeks that you're in the hospital because that's not negligence. You're in the hospital. I believe she was in coma. But the question is now, if you had more, again, if you're a balas tshuva coming back to Yiddishkeit, that's considered an oinus. That's called
Okay.
but if it means if you before you start to take on observance, that you wouldn't add for that unless in extreme circumstances. One of the methods that he said is to add in this kind of candle you use, or in the amount of olive oil, if you're using olive oil or kerosene, the permissible ones that you're using, to show as that, I would only fill up half a cup, now I'm filling up, a little bit more than half a cup I'm adding. But if we're talking about like your whole house is going to be like, with hundreds and hundreds of candles, that's also not the idea.
I'm using tea lights for my children. That's acceptable, right? I mean, I can use tea
Yeah,
lights.
no, tea lights are fine. Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of people. I mean, my daughters light tea lights, and my wife uses olive oil, but a lot of women do tea lights. They sell today Shabbos candles that are like these little small little round candles that are especially made for Shabbos lights. Hold on, Aaron. Rebecca wanted
Oh,
something.
okay.
Rebecca.
If somebody forgot to, or whatever, not forgot, but wasn't able to light candles for a Yom Tov as opposed to a Shabbos, would
Good
that
question.
still apply?
That's an excellent question. It seems like it would. It seems like it would. Again, and by the way, that's actually more probable than Shabbos, because sometimes women, because of the fact that you're allowed to use fire on Yom Tif, are a little bit more kind of, feel I have more time, and there's a certain
And it's so
rush time when it
busy
comes to
with
Shabbos.
guests and family and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. So I'm saying Yom Tov actually is probably more vulnerable to that issue. He doesn't say, but it seems like whenever we're lighting candles, I would assume you would apply to Yom Tov as well.
Okay.
Hold on, Barbara. Aaron wanted to ask.
I
Aaron?
just wanted to make a comment to prove the tea light thing. Chabad in Brooklyn, when they're asking women if they light, they try to get them to light. They give them tea lights and the
Yeah,
prayers.
sure. Tea lights is 100% not a problem. Again, I've never seen, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, that women light scented candles. And I think
I've
that's
never
just
seen that
because,
either.
I think just because maybe not appropriate. Barbara.
Yeah, I know we want to go to the next section of laws, but once we get closer, well, like Purim's coming up. Do we light candles for Purim?
No.
No, Purim is not one of the times we light candles.
Okay.
Candle lighting is only for the holidays where melacha is prohibited. We're not allowed to do work. So
Okay.
even though Yom Tov, we're allowed to light candle, but we have to light candles from an existing light, and there's Simchas Yom Tov. Purim, Hanukkah, we light candles, but the Hanukkah candles, that's a different purpose. We're not supposed to use the candles. The candles of Shabbos are meant to bring light and to be used for lighting up the house. But Purim is not, and let's say Tu B'Shvat, other kind of holidays are not. But a good question. Purim, we do not light candles. Now,
When-
when you open, just to finish off before we go on to the next laws, for instance, anytime you light candles, you would open up your siddur or go to the website that you use for daily information, let's say the Chabad.org or whatever group you use, to check what are the blessings you have to make for that day. So for instance, on the holidays, we make Shehechiyanu on most holidays. And if it's Shabbos and Yom Tov, that could happen on the same day. So you have to see exactly the wording. Not every time we light candles is the same wording. There's Shabbos and Yom Tov. Yom Kippur has, I think Rosh Hashanah has. You have to check the wording for the holiday or the Shabbos if it comes out on a holiday that you're lighting. So either you have it in your siddur, or the best is to double check with your source for online things. Baruch Hashem, today we have that information
.org
available.
usually does have that. Yeah, so that's what because they'll post that, because that was my next question,
Yeah.
making
So-
sure that I light the candles in the correct order, say the blessings. I mean,
Yeah.
lighting the candles correctly, but saying the correct blessings.
I'm not sure what you can see, but over here you'll see there's a full list of options. So you have here Erev Shabbos. You have Erev Shabbos, that's Yom Tiv. So then it would be Lahadik Ner Shel Yom Tiv. Sorry, Erev Yom Tiv. You have Erev Shabbos, that's Yom Tiv, which would be Ner Shabbos and Yom Tiv. So Shabbos comes first. Rosh Hashanah is Yom HaZikaron. Rosh Hashanah, that's Shabbos, is Shabbos Yom HaZikaron. Yom Kippur is Ner Shel Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbos is Ner Shel Shabbos v'Yom Kippurim. And then you have the times you add the Shehechiyanu, which we do all holidays aside for the 7th of Passover, which is coming up in the next month. So on the 7th of Passover, Shvi Shel Pesach, and then in Chutz La'aretz would be Shvi and Achron Shel Pesach, you do not say Shehechiyanu. That's the only holiday we don't say Shehechiyanu on. So but again, you double check every time, whether it's Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Shabbos Yom Tov, just to make sure you have the wording right and the schedule of how you read the wording right. So that's best. I would look it up before Shabbos or Yom Tov. Okay, now we move on to the laws of chapter 76, the laws of the prayers on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, so we have Shabbos is we have one extra prayer every Shabbos, which is the Musaf. Now, again, you have to remember, davening, the prayers that we daven throughout the week, throughout the year, are connected to the service in the temple. So in the temple, we always had what's called the Tamid. The Tamid was the morning and afternoon sacrifice. The word Tamid means the consistent, the sheep that was sacrificed every morning and afternoon. That corresponds to our morning prayer, which is Shacharis, and our Mincha prayer, which is the afternoon prayer. Ma'ariv is connected to the intestines, the extra parts that were burnt on the Mizbeach later in the evening. So those are the three. On holidays, and on Shabbos, and on Rosh Chodesh, we have what's called the Musaf, from the word Haisafa, the additional sacrifice, and to connect to that sacrifice in the temple on holidays and Shabbos, we have the Musaf prayer. So we're going to learn how that connects to our Shabbos, because Shabbos has a Musaf, and what the specific animal was for the Musaf. Each holiday has, we read it in the Torah, that the special sacrifices that were done for, and on Yom Kippur, friends, no matter what the day was, we always did the morning and afternoon sacrifice, the Tamid. And that's important to know, because meaning to say is that the morning and afternoon prayers are prayers that were in the temple was the same sacrifice. So therefore, if we make a mistake in the morning and afternoon prayers on Shabbos, is different, means that we're accustomed to praying weekday prayers, and in Shabbos a lot of times it can happen, someone would make a mistake and pray a morning or afternoon prayer that we do in the week. It's not so bad, so to say. It's not so, because that it's connected to the Talmud that anyways was a consistent sacrifice. The Musaf is more important because that's an addition for Shabbos or Yom Tov. Okay, so that's just that's getting into the laws of the prayers for Shabbos. So halacha number 1, Aleph. Noyagin lahagdim tfilas arvis Shabbos yerisim meisecha. On Friday nights, we make sure to daven to start Kabbalah's Shabbos before earlier than we would say regular Ma'ariv throughout the week. So if we daven Ma'ariv at a certain time, we find that the shul starts Ma'ariv a little earlier on Friday night. V'nachan, and this is a good custom. To accept Shabbos, again, the men accept Shabbos during the week, during Shabbos from davening. The women do it by lighting the candles. And we learned last chapter that even men who light candles, they're really still connecting the Shabbos, accepting the Shabbos with the Ma'ariv. So the Nachan Kidei Lahagdim Kabbalah Shabbos B'chol Ma'aseh Efshar, so we could bring Shabbos in as soon as possible. But it should be from plag, the half of the time of mincha, and further, meaning to say past the plag of mincha. Again, just to bring the zmanim, we have the different zmanim of the day, different times of the day. Again, a Jewish calendar clock, so to say, is divided by 12 daily hours, so it doesn't have to be 60 minutes. Hold on. So we have what's called mincha gedola. Chatzos is, let's say, the first midday is chatzos, which is around noon, which is, again, midday, it would be the 12 the 12 hours of the day, divide the light hours of the day divided by 12, and then how many minutes divided by that. So then you have, that's midday. We could start davening mincha from mincha gedola, okay, which is 1.5 hours after chatzos. So whenever midday is, an hour and a half after chatzos is mincha gedola. Then you have he writes over here the 10 hours is on Erev Shabbos and Friday, or Yom Tif. One should not start the meal at beginning of the 10th halachic hour into the day. In other words, 3 hours before sunset. That before then you don't. Mincha Ketana is the smaller mincha, or lesser mincha, smaller mincha, which this is 2.5 hours, halachic hours before sunset. So the first mincha gedola is an hour and a half after midday. Again, depending how long, but usually mincha Ketana goes further into the day. Now, what's plaga mincha? Plaga mincha would be an hour and 15 minutes because it's half of the mincha Ketana. Or simply plaga mincha, half of mincha. This is the midpoint between mincha Ketana and sunset. So if mincha Ketana is 2.5 halachic hours before sunset, half of that is an hour and 15 minutes. That's when plaga mincha is. Which is 1.25 halachic hours before the end of the day. Plaga mincha is the earliest time one may light candles on Shabbos. So we don't start Shabbos before plaga mincha, which was an hour and 15 minutes before sunset, or light candles for Hanukkah on a Friday. Okay. If one recited mincha before the time of plaga mincha, then Meir of the evening prayer service may be recited as early as plaga mincha. So during the summer hours, a lot of minyanim, I don't know about New York, but in Seattle, where the sun sets very late, even on the weekdays, we daven Meir earlier. So it has to be done after plaga mincha, which is, again, halachic. You have to remember that in the summer, when you could have 16 or 17 regular hours, so then obviously an hour is more than 60 minutes. In the winter, it's less than 60 minutes. Aaron, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, okay. When you were explaining it at the beginning, you went fast and I didn't catch everything and I don't understand everything. So just try to make it a little easier and go a little slower.
Okay, so let's just go back. We have the time of the halachic time of day is we have 12 hours at day, 12 hours at night. But the actual light and darkness depend on where you are in the world and the winter and summer, right? So the summer has longer days and the winter has longer nights. That doesn't change the fact that the night has 12 hours and the day has 12 hours. The difference is how long those hours are. In the winter, the hours at night have more minutes, more 60-second periods than the winter hours have, right? So let's say in theory, you would have, just to make it easier, you would have 18 hours of night, whatever, darkness, and you would have 6 hours of light. So then you would have 6 hours it would be divided by 12, and how many minutes fit in to 6 hours? That's, in the time of, so if you do 60 times 6 divided by 12, so that would be the amount of an hour. Half day is 3 hours of the 6. That's chatzos, midday.
But I don't get that. The 3 hours, the 60 times. Do I really need to know that?
No. So let's say half day is always 12 halachic hours, right?
Right.
But let's say what we call hours, which was 60 minutes, there's only 6 of those hours of daytime, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, so then we have to divide those 6. And really what happens is each hour, halachic hour is 30 minutes. So if you do
Halakhic hour is only 30 minutes?
Yeah, well, it'll be 30 minutes if there's only 6. If you have to have, if you have only 6 regular hours of light, and you need to make it into 12 hours, so you have to make every hour into 2 hours, right?
Right.
For the halachic hour, it becomes 30 minutes.
Okay.
So 6 halachic hours, which is half a day, would be 3 regular hours.
Gotcha.
So in the 3 regular hours of the day, at that point it hits chatzos. Now let's say it becomes light at 8:30 in the morning, right?
Right.
It becomes dark at 6 hours later. So then you divide that into half, and half that would be chatzos.
Okay.
When can you start davening mincha, which is mincha gedola? Is 1.5 hours after chatzos. But again, the hours are not our hours. Each hour is made up of 30 minutes. So you have to do 45 minutes after chatzos, right?
Okay.
Are minutes. Then after that, you have Mincha Ketana. Mincha Ketana is not, it's not away from half day, it's closer to nighttime. So it's 2.5 hours before sunset, whenever that sunset is, and the hours are the amount of minutes of winter or summer. Again, if you're going to have 18 hours of light, so then you're going to have, each hour is going to have more than 60 minutes, you understand? So
Yeah.
then 2.5 hours before that, halachic hours, is when you're going to add to that, is when you could, when we have Mincha Ketana. Half of that time is called Plaga Mincha, half of the Mincha Ketana, which is an hour and 15 halachic minutes before the sunset. You cannot light candles, and we don't start davening Ma'ariv before Plaga Mincha. Even during the week, if you like to daven Ma'ariv early, it's from Plaga Mincha on, which is again an hour and a quarter halachic hours before sunset. And
Okay. So
I'll post this chart over here that gives you in more.
okay, post it in the
Yeah, okay.
in our chat. But let me just say one thing. So what I get out of this is that this is how they do it. Look on the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, you still no, but still, because I mean, it's not just looking at the candle. You also have sometimes you want to know when you could start lighting candles. So you have to, or when you could, how early you could light candles, or daven ma'ariv, etc. But yeah,
Gotcha.
always check the calendars best. Rebecca, you want to ask something?
Yeah, actually, it's about this. So it seems to me that men like rush to shul like because they have to daven mincha before shkia or
Mhm.
faith or whatever. But why can't like could in theory could men have a minyan like earlier in the afternoon and then they don't have to like rush like crazy to get to shul?
Okay, so you're right, but first of all, there's many reasons why we don't. Something people are busy. People prefer to daven in the second minyan, in the second from the mincha katana. Also, the question is really what makes up mincha gadol and mincha katana is how early in any time were they able to again to sacrifice the tamid. So because I think erev Pesach they were able to start doing the tamid after Chatzos, an hour and 50 minutes after Chatzos, they made it earlier. So then, because the Korban Pesach was always after the Tamid Shel Ben Arboim. So then, erev Pesach, they would push the carbon early as possible. So afterwards, they have enough hours for everyone to sacrifice the Paschal lamb. Because if they would do it later, so because of that, it's not your regular time of mincha. So therefore, you could start mincha from mincha gedola, but preferably is mincha ketana. And so therefore, and also practically, a lot of people, it's harder for them to daven from Mincha Ketana, Mincha Gedola, if they're at work, if there's no minyan. Like where I am here at WeWork, we have a minyan at 2 o'clock, so which is not Mincha Gedola. I mean, it depends in the winter or the summer, but it's a set time that we daven.
But could they daven at
Yes.
whatever the time is? Like, could they daven at that earlier time and then
Yes.
they don't have to rush
Yes.
like
Yes.
crazy?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And what about
Yeah.
someone, a
Yeah,
guy?
If a woman says that her husband or her father, what have you, that is never around to help because he's running to mincha and there's options to daven earlier, you're allowed to, yes.
And what if a guy has to, let's say he's somewhere with no minyan and he's davening b'yichidas, could he also do that?
Yes, you could daven from mincha gedol until shkia.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, Barbara.
Yeah, I'm not trying to confuse the issue here, but I'm just curious. Up in Alaska, when I was up there, I mean, I was there during the winter, and so I mean, it's like dark, 18 hours of the day or whatever. So how would you fix the times for that? I mean, what I ended up doing when I was up there was I just would go on Chabad.org and kind of follow the times here in Paulsbo. I know that's probably not halachically correct, but that's what I did. So how would you do that?
Actually, again, Chabad.org has Alaska Times. I would check the Alaska Times. Chabad Baruch Hashem has today a shliach, a few shliachim, a few emissaries in Alaska. So I would call the local Chabad if you're there. What I know, my father was there. My father brought the rabbi of Alaska down there, and he was going there before. What they did was they would go according to the times of Vancouver. Now, that doesn't work for certain things. I mean, for instance, you can't light Shabbos candles Friday night when Vancouver is in the winter, and it's already dark, so it's Shabbos there. So for certain things, they would go with the Zman of Vancouver, even if it's like past what we're talking about. It's not in the spec, in the range of what we're talking about now because of the extreme time differences. But I would check what they're doing. If you're in Alaska next time, especially the Alaska is Anchorage is different than Fairbanks. Fairbanks is really, my father would say, Fairbanks in summer never gets dark and in winter never gets light. So the further north you are, the more extreme it is, and then you check what they're doing. But if I'm correct, they go with the schedule of Vancouver because that's the next Jewish community.
All right, thanks, Rabbi.
Sure, Aaron.
Okay, so when my son was younger, he got a city, and then you had to find the shuls and do research on when Shabbos started. And what you're talking about, where it's 24 hours half the year and 24 hours the other half of the year, the only shul is Chabad, and is exactly what my son found, which is what you just said about using the next city, closest
Next
city
church, yeah. Okay, so again, they wouldn't start doing malach until Sunday morning. All right, so let's see it inside. It's good to daven before, like we said, so we bring in Shabbos earlier. Rak, the condition is Shiemi plaga mincha from a half of mincha, which we said is an hour and 50 minutes before night. Ulamaila. Even if you're careful to always daven Marv in its time when it becomes dark. There's a lot of minyanim. There's like even today in Yerushalayim, again, depending where you live, but there's today in Yerushalayim, you have the option to always daven bizman, meaning to say to daven in the morning bizman, like Nate's, and to daven at night as it's dark. And you check the schedule. Then you have certain minyanim that are constantly 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, etc. When is the Zman, when the stars come out? Nevertheless, even though in the week you're careful to daven Bizman, on Shabbos you could go earlier to accept Shabbos earlier. Now, what happens if you always, like Rebecca asked, you're always davening mincha late, and now you're davening after Plaga mincha, because you're davening mincha, let's say before Shkia, and Shkia really, and here you're davening Shkia, sunset is after Plaga mincha, and now you're davening after Plaga mincha, which is about the time you'd usually daven mincha, you're davening Ma'ariv, starting Kabbalah Shabbos. It's still not a problem because of the importance of bringing in Shabbos early. We're still not concerned about that. Usually you should not do that. Means usually if you have a schedule to daven mincha later, you should make sure to always daven Ma'ariv after that time. Nevertheless, sheish ba mitzvah, because here we're having an additional mitzvah that overrides that concern, which is Ma'isiv Michal al Shabbos, to add from weekday into Shabbos to extend your Shabbos to a longer time, which is part of the mitzvah of Shabbos. Okay, let's see the footnotes on this law. He says it is proper to do so in order to usher in the Shabbos as early as possible. So he says, see Mesechus Shabbos, which is the Talmud, page 118a. In Talmudic times, the custom was to usher in the Shabbos with the saying of Baruch Hu. So then they did it Baruch Hu. The idea, of course, of the Lecha Dodi was only authored in later times, that's why what he's pointing out is, why does he call it Ma'ariv as opposed to Kabbalah Shabbos? Because a lot of what we say today was added from the times of the Arizal. It was the Arizal student who authored the Lecha Dodi. Okay, in Tzfat. What is Plaga Mincha? So he says, like we said, discussed before, an hour and 50 minutes before sunset, that's halachic hours. Okay. Number 3 is, and even those accustomed to praying Ma'ariv on the time during the weekdays, which is when the stars appear. So he says 3 small stars. What does it mean, stars? 3 small stars. They must be close together and not scattered. So he's defining what does it mean. Back I'm not that old, but I still remember when we went outside to see when Shabbos is out. We didn't have exactly the times. We checked 3 stars. So he's just telling us when you're outside or you don't have the schedule of when the times are. There's Manamar, you can't just look outside and say, oh, I see 3 stars, one all the way south, north, and east. He says they should be close together, not scattered. Okay, which means it's darker. The darker it is, the more visual the stars are. That's the point. Okay. Number 4 is, the question is, Even if he says, then although sometimes in the weekdays the mincha prayer said at the same time you're davening Ma'ariv now, maybe that's a concern. So he's going to explain what the concern is over here in footnote number 4. My mouse is jumping. All right. If you wish to pray Ma'ariv earlier, you must pray Mincha before the Plaga Mincha. Means now one of the things, the conditions is if you want to bring Ma'ariv all the way to the Plaga Mincha, you can't daven Mincha after the Plag, which is after the hour and 14 minutes, and then go right away into Ma'ariv. You should try to daven Mincha before the Plag, which is before the hour and 15 minutes, and then you daven the Ma'ariv after the Plag. So if you wish to pray Ma'ariv earlier, you must pray Mincha before Plaga Mincha. So says the Magen Avram in 267. The Siddur Derech HaChaim holds that that a congregation may be lenient and pray both Mincha and Ma'ariv after Plag. Means, let's say, and this happens all the time. Let's say you're part of a small community that people could only gather, in a short period of time, and for you to daven Mincha before the Plag, and then to daven Ma'ariv after the Plag, it's too much time, it's stretching it, you won't have a minyan. So in a community sense, the Siddur Derech HaChaim says then a community, and this is a question I think one of you guys asked about how does one do it when you're alone. When you're alone, you would have to daven the Mincha before the hour and 15 minutes, which is called Plag. Plag again means half. And the Ma'ariv would be done after the Plag. But if you're part of a community, the Derech HaChaim says it's, hold on, Aaron, it is, you could be lenient, obviously in a case where it's complicated. Let's just finish this footnote before we get to your question, Aaron. The Mishnah Brura, however, rules, unlike the Derech HaChaim, that we may not rely on this unless we pray Ma'ariv at twilight after sunset. Means then you can only do Ma'ariv if you're doing it after Nates, after Shkia. So if you daven Mincha after the Plaga Mincha, then the earliest you could daven Ma'ariv, according to the Mishnah Brura, would be after Shkia, which Shkia is after the sun is already set. So it's usually depending on the location you are in the equator, etc., how long from Shkia to actual darkness. But Shabbos has already come in halachically from Shkia. Yes, Aaron.
I know this from the summer. When we do Shabbos early, they always say, repeat Shema when you get home.
Yeah, that's a separate issue. That's the issue of saying Shema at darkness. So the idea is that's a good point, that if you've accepted Shabbos earlier and before it becomes night, Shema halachically should be said in the dark. So you say it again when it becomes dark. Bismana, you say it, let's say 8, 9, 10, whatever the time is that you could say Shema. The earliest Shema. Okay, thank you. Footnote number 5 is, what are we talking about here? So even though that usually during the week you would daven bisman and now you're davening earlier, so he says that's not a problem for Shabbos because it's a mitzvah to add. Since we are now accustomed to welcome the Shabbos at the Kabbalah Shabbos service, not like Baruch Hu like it once was, service we have no reason to pray Ma'ariv earlier than its regular time. Okay, so he's saying basically what he's pointing out over here is an important point. The mitzvah is to daven mincha, to daven taking Shabbos early. So if in the biblical times or the Talmudic times, when accepting Shabbos by Ma'ariv meant Ma'ariv, the actual Baruch Hu, so to accept Shabbos earlier, you could do it earlier, even though during the weekdays you would daven at this time mincha and you take Shabbos in Bisman. But if the idea is that you want to take in Shabbos earlier a little, and we do today by saying L'chadodi or Kabbalah Shabbos, which is that whole part of that we say before Baruch Hu. So the actual Ma'ariv itself, you don't have to daven Ma'ariv early because you already accepted Shabbos. That's why there's a lot of customs in many synagogues that they have a speech between Kabbalah Shabbos and Ma'ariv to stretch it out. So we should daven Ma'ariv Bisman. Again, if you're taking in the whole Shabbos earlier and doesn't get talked too much later, is obviously a different scenario. Okay. Number 6 and 7. So it says, because to accept Shabbos and earlier, it overrides the Zman of Ma'ariv if you're accustomed. The question is really, and this is really a question, is those who have the custom in the summer, because a lot of people, one of the reasons people take Shabbos in early is because of the benefit of having a family meal, your children to be up and your wife to be up and in the mood of eating. So even though in the summer, you may not daven Ma'ariv early. You're going to daven Ma'ariv Bisman. A lot of people will daven Ma'ariv in this proper time in the summer. Only Friday night, because they want to be able to sit down with their family to supper. Because what would you do in the summer? You would eat supper first, and after supper, you'd go to shul. You don't wait to eat supper in the weekday until Ma'ariv, because Ma'ariv is much later. But you don't daven early because that's not something that you would like to daven Bisman. So you're davening, let's say 9 o'clock or 9:30, 10 o'clock on the weekday, eating dinner before. But on comes Shabbos, you want to eat dinner with your family, and you don't eat. So you want to eat this with the Shabbos. You don't want to eat supper before Shabbos. So here you have a situation is that you can't tell the person that you take Kabbalah Shabbos early and now wait 2 hours until Ma'ariv. And then it defeats the purpose. You're not going to come home anyways till later. So that's obviously different. So he says over here like this: if you pray Ma'ariv after Plag, even privately, you must accept the holiness of Shabbos, even if you do not wish to welcome the Shabbos yet. Means if you want to daven Ma'ariv after Plag on Friday, that's taking in Shabbos. You can't daven Ma'ariv after Plag and then say, I'm going to take Shabbos in later. That doesn't work. Number 7 is Rabbeinu Tam. Of course, Rabbeinu Tam's times are a little further. Rabbeinu Tam says that it's a mitzvah, the Rabbanon, rabbinical. But Rabbeinu Yaakov of Kurbi or Korbil says, and Rosh maintain that it's the Raisa. Means taking in Shabbos in early is a mitzvah. Is it a rabbinic mitzvah or is it a biblical mitzvah? Rabbeinu Tam says it's a rabbinic mitzvah, and the others, Rabbeinu Yaakov of Korbil and the Rosh, both obviously contemporaries within the same time frame, meaning the Rishonim, they maintain it's a biblical, it's a deraisa, it's a biblical mitzvah to take Shabbos in early, and therefore it overrides even if throughout the week you would daven Ma'ariv later. Again, in a normal time period where we always take Shabbos in early, one does not daven Ma'ariv until the Zman, even if you're doing Kabbalah Shabbos a little earlier. Okay. Any questions? Yes, Aaron.
If it's a biblical and not a rabbinic, there's a definite spot in the Torah where it would say, and if it was a rabbinical, they would know because the rabbis say there's no spot, but we're going to add it, and so they would state it.
Okay, very good question. That's a good question in general about how we understand what's the difference between a biblical and rabbinic. There's a source for it. We have to check it up. There's a makor in the source in the Torah. The question is, the Torah, is it a hint, a remez, that the Torah is hinting to the rabbinic law, or is it an obligation from the Torah? It means there is a source of the Torah for it, and the question is that source, the verse that we have to teach us to take on Shabbos earlier, is that a remez which would give strength to the argument that it's rabbinic, or if it's a biblical commandment from the Torah and therefore it's biblical.
Is there a lot of remes in the Torah?
Yeah, there are. We have, for instance, we have the question. The Gemara says, "How do we know Esther min the Torah minayin?" Even though Esther is clearly a rabbinic, the idea of reading the Megillah, all that is rabbinic. So, but there's a hint of it in the Torah. Anochi haster Esther. We have a verse that talks about Esther, mentions the idea of Esther. The name Esther means to hide, regarded as hidden in the story of Purim. Therefore, his name is not mentioned. So the miracles were hidden miracles. So it's not. It doesn't just because we have a rem as a hint in the Torah doesn't make it biblical. It just is a hint in the Torah for the rabbinic law of Purim. Also, we have the hint of the Torah that according to the Ramban Nachmanides about the menorah, which is Hanukkah, which is in Balos Chesanoris. So there's what's called a hint that would support the argument for rabbinic law, and then do we look at it as a rabbinic law or biblical law, and that's the disagreement between Rabbeinu Tam and the others. Rebecca.
Yeah, so people who want to make Shabbos early, like because of their family or whatever, like why can't they just like wait till after it gets dark to say the whole Ma'ariv? It seems like, isn't it like saying Hashem's name in vain to like have to repeat Shema again afterwards? Or like why maybe they just shouldn't say it the first time around? It just seems like, why would you say Hashem's name in vain or say an extra tefillah like for no reason?
That's an excellent question, but we don't do the whole Ma'ariv again. We do the actual, again.
The Shema?
the main part of the tefillah is the Shemona Esrei, and that's connected to the carbon or to the parts of the Ivarim that are done at Ma'ariv. The Shema is a separate biblical mitzvah to say Shema in the morning and the evening. That is the time of saying it is in the morning prayer, in the afternoon prayer, in the evening prayer. Excuse me, but because the Shema has to be said at night, when you go to sleep and when you wake up. So therefore, the going to sleep part has to be when it's night. So therefore, we repeat the Shema, and it's not. It's the first Shema, so to say, is kind of more of an adava, like almost like a. It's not. You're not saying God's name in vain because you're saying the Shema, but you have to make sure to repeat it to fulfill your biblical obligation of saying the Shema.
It just seems like redundant to me.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. But it's part of the nusach tefillah is also very important, and to do Kabbalah Shabbos before Ma'ariv also, you're not allowed to eat. So once you've done Kabbalah Shabbos, we should go into Ma'ariv, and also part of the problem is there's a minyan, the idea that you should daven with a minyan. All these things. The only time, for instance, now you're coming up to Purim. I'll finish off here. Coming up to Purim, where we have the obligation to eat the Sudas Yom Tov, the meal on Friday. So there is the concept, it's called Paris Map and Makadish. There are times where we could carry a meal into the night. And if you're able to daven Ma'ariv after the meal, there's a method of what's called, let's say you start a mitzvah, Sudas mitzvah, which would be Purim, on Friday. So when it comes the women would light candles during the meal, they would break from the meal to light candles. The men could continue to eat with the women, cover the bread. It's called Paris Mapa. You cover the bread on the table, make Kiddush. So you're bringing in Shabbos, and then Ma'ariv is done later. So there is a way to daven Ma'ariv afterwards, but there's a lot of issues with that. Is if someone's saying a little l'chaim at the Purim meal, that you may end up davening without a minyan. B, you may end up forgetting to daven Ma'ariv. So there's a lot of, because you're not used to the schedule. So there's a lot of reasons not to do it, but a lot of people do it, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch the ways to do it. But it's called Paris Mapa. You cover the bread, make Kiddush, continue the meal, and then bench, and then you would daven Ma'ariv after the meal.
Okay, thanks.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining, and it's been a pleasure like always. And see you all Be'ezus Hashem next week. And I don't know if we're gonna have a class. When's it today's? Next week we'll be able to have a class before Purim. Laila Tov, and take care.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.